Hi, I'm Laura from Meadowlark Violin, and I know that you want to learn vibrato. It's probably the number one question I get asked as a violin teacher. What's that shaky thing you do with your left hand, and how can I learn to do it? Vibrato is one of those things that makes the violin so beautiful. But violin teachers tend to want to wait till students are more at an intermediate level before we start introducing vibrato. And that's just because we want you to have a really good grasp of the basics. I always say that vibrato is icing on the cake, and you want to make sure you have a cake before you start trying to put icing on something. But we're kind of doing a disservice by waiting so long because there are a lot of things you need to be thinking about and practicing right now that can help you get to that point where you're ready to learn vibrato sooner. And it's also going to make learning the vibrato a lot easier when you get there. So here are 12 things you need to be practicing or thinking about that will help you master vibrato. Number one, make sure your violin hold is stable and comfortable. You don't want to be holding the violin too up, too far down, too much inside. You don't want your shoulder to be up. All those things are going to cause tension, which is going to make vibrato harder. And if your violin is not comfortable and stable, when you start wiggling your hand over here, it could shake your violin back and forth, which is, again, going to make it a lot harder. So I've got a link in the comments onto how to adjust your shoulder rest to make sure you do have a comfortable hold. Number two, be aware of tension. Doing vibrato is all about being relaxed, and you need to practice thinking about any places in your body that are tense. If you think you're relaxed, try to figure out how to be more relaxed. Practice it as much as you can. All right, number three, make sure your left hand position is correct. This is the most common thing I see from beginners. It's pretty much impossible to get a good vibrato with your wrist up like this and your thumb back, so make sure your wrist is straight. You don't want it to be the other way as well, so nice and straight and relaxed. Number four, do your stretches. Before you play, make sure you're stretching. You can stretch the big muscles, then work your way down to the smaller muscles, but you want to do as much as you can to help those muscles relax. Number five, don't grip or squeeze with the left hand. And a lot of times if you are gripping or squeezing, you're going to feel it right here in this muscle. So you want to try to relax that. You don't want a death grip on the violin, as relaxed as possible. Number six goes along with that, and it's using light finger pressure. You want to press down the strings with the least amount of pressure. And remember that your hand, it's opposing each other. So if you're using a lot of pressure here, your thumb's going to oppose that and also be tight. So if your thumb is tight, if that muscle is tight, it could be because you're pressing too much, not necessarily because of the thumb. Number seven, practice slides. This is one of my favorite warm-ups. I do it every day, and a slide is when you have a finger down with the least amount of pressure possible, and you're going to slide it up and down the fingerboard. Okay, so one thing you're making sure here is that your thumb is traveling along with your hand. You're not leaving it back and trying to do this just with your fingers. And it's very light pressure with your thumb. It's just sliding up and down. All right, there's no sticking going on here. You can also do this with your bow. You don't have to go up really far, just go until your hand hits the bout. You want to go up and down, and if you hear like a stuttering in here while you're doing this, something kind of like that, that probably means there's tension somewhere in your left hand that you need to relax. So do these with every finger and on every string as a warm-up and get them to where they're really smooth and relaxed. Number eight, practice the vibrato motion without the violin. Now, there's two types of vibratos. I like to start off teaching arm vibrato because I think it's the easiest type of vibrato to stay relaxed. And when you're doing arm vibrato, the motion kind of comes from the upper arm, and everything else is so relaxed that when that motion pushes the arm out, the wrist and the fingers are super relaxed and kind of go with that motion. So you can practice this where you push out this way, your hand and your wrist, and your fingers just kind of go along with the ride. And you can also practice actually kind of putting one finger touching your thumb and do this motion kind of keeping one finger down, right? You can do that with all the fingers because that's what's going to be happening when you're doing vibrato. That one finger is going to be down, and the other fingers, you want to make sure that they're really relaxed above the fingerboard. Another big part of vibrato is this knuckle right here, the knuckle closest to the fingernail. When you're doing vibrato, it is flexing and then returning to its original position. And you want to go ahead and start working on that knuckle to where it moves that way. So one way is just doing this, kind of pushing it and helping it come back. You can do that with all your knuckles. The pinky is notoriously difficult for everyone. And you can also practice on a surface. You can use your Mozart Bible. This might give you good luck. Put your finger on the surface and kind of pull back with your arm. That knuckle should kind of flatten and flex and then should return to its original position. Another exercise that can help you get ready for vibrato is something I call knocking on your violin. So you want to move your hand up here, close to the bout. Doesn't really matter what note you're on. And you're going to push kind of your hand out this way. This is going to flatten and then it's going to come back in and kind of knock. So I'm a little too far out because I had to kind of do that to make it knock. So I'm going to move my hand up. There you go. You can see that when it comes back to the curved position, it knocks. And that's what I want, to kind of practice that. I'm relaxed. Notice I'm not doing something weird like this or like this. Just keeping my wrist pretty straight. It's just pushing out and coming back in and knocking. You do want your fingers to be relaxed over the fingerboard. I tucked them under just to show you what that looks like, but you want them relaxed and hanging out over here while you're practicing this. And one thing you notice is that it needs to be rhythmic. And that brings me to my next point, is you want to be practicing your rhythms now because it plays a big part in vibrato. Everyone kind of thinks it's just this creative kind of motion, but it needs to be very rhythmic and very structured to work. And as you start learning vibrato, one of the exercises that you're going to do is you're going to start slow. Basically, your vibrato is going to match a quarter note at about 60 on the metronome. And then you're going to double it and do eighth notes. Then you're going to triple it, do triplets, then 16th notes. And then by the time you get to about 6 tuplets, you're almost pretty much out of vibrato. So that's how you can start slow and build it up. So you need to make sure that now you aren't forsaking your rhythms, that you're studying those using a metronome and making sure you're comfortable with rhythms. And the last and final tip, the thing that you need to be focusing on right now so that you are ready to master vibrato is your intonation. That's right, you need to make sure that you are thinking constantly about putting your fingers in the right place and getting them in tune. The sooner you master intonation, the sooner you're going to be ready to start vibrato. And I shouldn't say master intonation. I'm not sure if anyone ever really masters it, but as soon as you get to a comfortable level where you can play the majority of the time in tune, that's probably the number one thing that lets me know a student is really ready to start learning vibrato. So the sooner you perfect that, the sooner you're going to learn vibrato. And the easier vibrato is going to be. Remember, if you're not in tune, when you start to speed things up and start wiggling your hand over here, it's not going to make it sound better. So really focus on your intonation as much as you can. I hope these tips help you get ready to start practicing vibrato. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. I'm Laura from Meadowlark Violin. Happy practicing.